The Charlottesville Regional Chamber of Commerce has released its 2026 first quarter retail report, and the numbers show strong signs of retail growth. Dakota Griffin has more.
The numbers point to a 9% increase within the first quarter. The Chamber of Commerce says that this is a reminder that where people choose to spend their money has a big impact.
The first quarter of this year has been very strong. All localities that we track exceeded the inflation rate.
The region collected almost $4.5 million more in retail sales tax in the first quarter of 2026 compared to the same period last year. Louisa County saw a nearly 20% jump, while Charlottesville's revenue was at more than 13%. Neil Williamson with the Free Enterprise Forum says shoppers who chose to spend locally helped fuel that growth.
We've dealt with some pretty significant issues with regard to supply chain, as well as the war, and you're looking at economic strife.
Despite the adversity, Williams says the region is seeing low unemployment and consumers ready to open their wallets. While there is concerns over inflation and rising costs, there's hope that next quarter will be even higher. In Charlottesville, Dakota Griffin, 29 News.